Our next topic here is on the Pavement Management Report. My name is Henkel. I am your Street Stormwater Director for almost 5 years now in May. I'm originally from Omaha, Nebraska, and I've had the pleasure to serve 5 different municipalities over the course of my career. Hey, Tom. So one of the things that's common in every community is, what are you going to do my road, or when is my road scheduled to be resurfaced, or any of that. So I'm going to take you kind of through the steps of the process of the tool that we use, which is the Pavement Management Report, and how we use that to identify the roads that we're going to plug into our long-range program. So in particular, this report is used in our street maintenance program. So how this program came about was back in 2016, the voters approved a 2,500% sales tax strictly dedicated to streets. So that became effective January 1st, 2017. And this money can be used to resurface roads, repair concrete streets, sidewalks, traffic signals, even purchase equipment if we need to. So the current sales tax rate in Broken Arrow is 8.417% if you live in Tulsa County. If you live in Wagner County, it is 8.8%. So here's the breakdown of that sales tax rate and how your money is spent. The state of Oklahoma takes 4.5% of that. 1% goes to the Broken Arrow Municipal Authority, so this is your water, utilities, trash. And then 1.5% of that goes to the general fund. 0.3% goes to fire. There's the 0.25% I was telling you about that's dedicated strictly to streets. And then 0.5 goes to capital improvements. And then Tulsa County gets 0.37% of that tax rate. So after you take all the Tulsa County's money, our percentage out, and the state of Oklahoma, roughly the city of Broken Arrow only gets about 3.5% of your sales tax rate to apply to all the services that you guys benefit from. So how does the tax rate break down compared to other municipalities? If you follow the graph from left to right, you'll see there at Broken Arrow is at 8.417, Tulsa's 8.52, Bixby's 8.92, Owasso is the same, as is Sand Springs. Claremore's 9.33, Catoosa's 9.58, Sapulpa's 9.67, Coweta's 9.8, and Glenpool's at 9.7%. So the point of this message is, it's important you get a bigger bang for your buck. If you shop here in Broken Arrow, your services are going to go a lot farther with your money. So we invest a lot of money in our infrastructure, not just streets, but utilities, our stormwater system as well. So here is just a graph identifying the importance of pavement preservation and to be more cost effective. If you follow the top of the graph, if you go all the way down to the bottom of the graph, we're kind of getting that reconstruction process, so the dollar's not going to stretch very far. Whereas if we start maintaining our roads at the top of the graph, we'll be able to extend the life cycle of our pavements and spend that money more wisely. So here's kind of just an overview of our roadway network system. It is a capital asset, currently valued at approximately $600 million. We have 511 center lane miles that we maintain, or approximately 1,250 lane miles. 383 center lane miles, or 939 lane miles, is asphalt, so 75% of our roadway network system is asphalt. The other 25% is concrete, comprising of 128 center lane miles, or 311 lane miles. Our average condition, our PCI, our pavement condition index, is a score of 70. I'll talk about that here in a minute, but this is right on the border of good and very good. So here's kind of the definitions of the rankings of your PCI. As I mentioned, 70 is right there on the border of good and very good. So back in, I'll touch on a little bit here. Back in 2016 was the first time the city has ever done a analyzation of its roadway network system. So we hired a consultant. They brought in this fancy van that had 3D imaging, and they go through and they drive every street, and it'll analyze our street. So I get this report, and it'll tell me how many cracks or how many stresses, de-stresses, alligator cracking are in each roadway segment. So it prints out this report, and each roadway segment gets a PCI score. So anywhere from, like I said, 0 from 100. So the roads that we focus on, identify and work for, are anywhere from that 25 to 75 range. Anything below 25 is going to require reconstruction, and that's not in our street and stormwater department's purview. That would go over to engineering and most likely be contracted out. Anything over 75 is what we call pavement preservation, where we use minimal methods like sealing cracks, or it's called a fog seal, something just to extend that life cycle another 7 to 10 years before it needs to be resurfaced, again stretching that dollar to be more effective. So in that 25 to 75 range, those are the roads that we've identified that will get the mill and overlay. So we come in and we take off the 2 inches of asphalt and we apply the new 2 inches of asphalt on top of that. Or our concrete streets, when the cracks or deficiencies, we go through and remove those and replace them with green concrete. So those are the projects that we are looking for. So last fall, City Council was awarded the contract to have a consultant, the same consultant that did the first report, drive our roadway network system to provide another updated report. That report is due sometime this spring, so we'll find out if our scores have increased from that 70 that I was talking about, just to see that, make sure that we're making improvements. So one of the things I want to touch on, this report was done in 2016. The original report was done in 2016. At that time, there was no funding dedicated to just streets. So as I mentioned, the funding for the street sales tax fund didn't become effective until January 1st, 2017. So I expect, or my hope is, that when this report is generated this spring, you will see that number 70 increase, 72, somewhere in that range. We also have the voters approved 2018 general obligation bond package, which has set aside $25 million for residential rehab. So $2.5 million a year as well. That money also goes towards rehabilitation projects. So in the report, it has specified that it takes about $4.5 million a year to spend on street maintenance just to keep that score of 70. And to put that in perspective, the street sales tax fund only generates around $3.5 to $4 million a year. So you can see by that report status that we're not anywhere near that $4.5 million threshold just to maintain our roads at that condition of 70. So what that additional $2.5 million does from the bond allows us to exceed that $4.5 million so we can improve our roadway network system.
How often do you do that?
So the report's done, should be done every 5 to 7 years. So we're be around close to 7 years by the time this report comes out. So as I mentioned, a couple of the projects or types of work that we do are resurfacing projects. So I'll take you through kind of a scenario on how these projects go from start to finish. So here's an existing neighborhood. It's called Leland Acres. If you look, I don't know if you can see it real well on the slides, but you can see there's alligator cracking down the middle of the road, all over the roads, kind of spidered out. So that's what it looked like before. So one of the things with resurfacing projects is we have an obligation to meet ADA standards at that time. So the first things that we do is we will replace any broken curb and gutter. We also upgrade our ADA ramps to be compliant with the current standards. And then we fix any broken sidewalk along that, what they call the circulatory path in the area of the construction zone. So here's the curb and gutter and some driveways that get repaired during the course of this project. After the concrete work is done, the next phase is the milling. So this is the process I explained earlier where we take off the 2 inches of existing asphalt. And then after that's done, we put on the 2 new inches of hot mix asphalt. And this is the finished product in Leland Acres. Again, you can't see it probably because of the lights, but you don't see the alligator cracking that was there before. Here in Oklahoma, the typical length of a road, asphalt road, before it needs to be resurfaced is anywhere from 12 to 17 years, somewhere in that ballpark. So again, there's other measures that I explained, the crack sealing that we can do, other things that we can do to extend the life cycle of pavement, so we can extend that 12 to 18 years, or 12 to 16, 17 years into that 22-year range before we have to resurface it. And the other types of projects are the concrete panel replacement projects. Here's Vander Acres. You can see that we've already been through here. We've patched potholes here. We've got cracking all over. Again, they just come in, remove it, and replace it with new concrete. And you see those pothole patches are gone. There's no cracks in the concrete. Again, this is something here also we'll go through and update the ADA ramps to be compliant as well with current standards. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions or comments you may have about the process on how we identify roads for Yes,
Yeah,
ma'am.
how do you identify, I mean, is it the neighborhoods that need to notify you that their roads are in bad shape? Or is it something that the city periodically just drives through the neighborhoods to find out which ones are?
So as I mentioned, the report gives us a score of every street. So the
I'm
report,
having a hard time hearing.
the report that I mentioned
Uh,
gives us a score of every street, a PCI score. So that's the report that we use to identify the projects we're going to do. So the report's going to tell us this street from this street is a 60 or this is a 65, and you'll start to notice a pattern in the neighborhood. And so that's how we identify which projects we're going to do. So it's not necessarily, I mean, we'll take any questions you have, but we do use that report as our justification.
okay, you said that the asphalt roads last anywhere between 12 and 17 years.
Correct.
What about concrete?
Concrete lasts about 25 to 30 years,
25 to 30?
but they're more expensive. So each material has its purpose. It's more costly and labor intensive on the front end to pour a concrete street than it is to do an asphalt street. But on the back end, like I just mentioned, the concrete street's going to last a lot longer. Yes, sir.
Any chance you guys can get better paint for striping of the lanes and center stripes? Because I can guarantee you, Oklahoma's some of the worst in the nation.
I'll tell you right now, it's the same everywhere. It's the same paint that I've used in Nebraska. It's the same paint, we just met with the city of Tulsa a couple weeks ago. It is the same paint. It doesn't not last very long because it's under the elements. And so one of the things that we are looking at are different types of products. So there is a neon paint that's out there that will help be more reflective at nighttime. So that's something we're looking at to make sure that it meets our MBTDC CD standards.
Especially if it's raining, you can't see the lines of the street.
No, they disappear.
Anything else? Yes, sir.
I'm curious, did you, 51st Street, half a mile west of Lynn Lane is in awful shape. Just yesterday, my wife and I were driving, chuck holes were so bad that there was actually a hubcap laying in one of the chuck holes that had popped off due to that pavement condition. My understanding is that road's not part of this current volume package due to waiting in Tulsa, the city of Tulsa, for between Lynn Lane and county line. Is that correct?
That is not correct. Well, that's not correct. So it's Tulsa County. Tulsa County maintains 51st Street from county line to Elm. That's not a city of Broken Arrow Road. But Tulsa County does have plans to widen 51st Street between those two lines.
Any time frame? Is it even on the drawing board?
It was supposed to be under construction a couple years ago. So I can't answer that.
So how do we, as citizens, put pressure on Tulsa County?
You can reach out to the commissioner, county commissioner. I know the county engineer has heard it several times, not just from me, but from other people too. But I'd probably start with the commissioners. I live right by there too, so I know what she is.
Yeah, it's awful.
It is, and we get a lot of complaints for potholes, and we have to tell them that it's not a city of Broken Arrow Road, it was maintained by Tulsa County. And
Is that the same thing when they repaved Aspen first?
that's correct. The city of Tulsa did that one. Yes. So we're in talks with the city of Tulsa and Tulsa County right now to kind of clean up some of these border streets because it is confusing to the citizens, not just whether you live in the city of Broken Arrow or Tulsa County. So we did something similar this past fall with Wagner County, where we kind of cleaned up our borderline with Wagner County. So we're in conversations with Tulsa County and the city of Tulsa doing the same thing right now.
In this 5-year thing, they go through every street,
Every street.
and neighborhood.
Yep. So the first time they did it, they analyzed the streets and they picked up, so we use it too for our asset management program. So the first go around, they picked up the streets and then they picked up all our traffic signals and traffic signs. So now we have an inventory of our signals and our signs. So anytime one needs to be replaced, we can go to this report and say, okay, we replace this sign because it was faded or whatnot. But this go around is picking up all of our curb and gutter specifically, our drainage ditches, our bridges, our sidewalk, so we're gonna know where there's gaps in sidewalks, so we can create some connectivity, fill in those missing pieces, and pick up the ADA ramps, so we'll know which ones are not compliant, which ones are compliant. But yeah, they have a newer van now that they use, and it picks up, it drives every street. It didn't take them very long. It was about 3 to 4 weeks for them to drive our every street in the city. But it's just, I mean, they're just driving.
You say they do sidewalks too, there's a reason. What if it's, from a tree, a lot of times the sidewalks get shifted because a tree is, what happens?
Well, the sidewalks are the maintenance responsibility of the homeowner, not the city. So, but it is not picking up defects in the sidewalk. It is just inventorying their sidewalk and then picking up gaps. So a lot of times you may have an empty lot in the neighborhood or along our arterial streets, waiting for development or something. I mean, there's a lot of places around town, I'm sure that you've seen, where we're lacking connectivity. So that's mainly the purpose of that, so we can provide that connectivity for pedestrian use or bicycle use, whatever.
I really like the fact that the signs you got on major intersections, that helps a lot.
So we did half of them like over a year ago, and so the other half, the signs should arrive here sometime in, I believe it's March, so the rest of the arterial signals will have the new LED street name signs. Yeah, they're nice. And they withstand, so the first ones we did were on Main Street about 3 years ago, and that was kind of a test trial for us to see if they would withstand the elements. And, they held up obviously through the flood and rains and snow and ice and all that, and never had one issue with them, so been beneficial for sure. Any other questions? All right, well, I appreciate you taking the time.